Welcome back to Switzer. When New York fell prey to the madness which defined September 11, Australia's Consul General in New York, Ken Allen, pulled together some very heavy hitters domiciled in the USA to create a network designed to help aliens living in New York cope with the challenges that came out of the tragic event. It has since grown into an ever-growing network which is helping expats find jobs, grow businesses and create opportunities. I recently interviewed Ken Allen and asked him about the genesis of the advanced network.
Well, it really started in New York. I'd arrived in New York with my wife Jill 3 weeks before September 11, and so we went through that whole horrific period. And what we found was that there were so many Australians living in New York that were disconnected from each other, certainly disconnected from people back home. We had mothers, fathers ringing, "Can we help? Can you look after my son, my daughter?" And obviously that was part of our job. Not that I really knew what consul generals did when I got to New York, but we discovered fairly quickly that it was really to be there to be with other Australians, be what they're doing, and help them where we could. And I guess when things settled down in early 2002, we decided to do something that I don't think had ever been seen before in a consulate. We wrote down 10 objectives, the sort of things that we'd like to achieve during my period as Consul General in New York. And then we looked at the enormity of the task and said we should call on some more resources. So we weren't necessarily going to get them out of Canberra, which was very helpful. So we looked to the Australian diaspora, and it started with a very narrow focus at first. We sat around a dining room table in the kitchen at the consulate with 10 enthusiastic people, and we sort of talked about the financial services sector, actually, to start off with. How can we make, Australia a financial services sector in the world? And they were all bankers. So when we announced this, we had all these wonderful people in Australia ringing up and saying, "My daughter's a violinist, I've got a son who's a curator." So we expanded it to include all the verticals, and that's a process we went through when we renamed it Advance. So it started off really trying to get the senior Australians in New York to mentor young Australians in New York. Then it went right across the United States. Then it went into the UK, Europe, and now around Asia. The three things it really tries to do is mentor young Australians in their preferred careers. It tries to help Australians who have got great ideas in Australia to find financing in the United States, to try and keep those businesses back home if possible, or to help them if they have to come to the United States. And it tries, most importantly, to bring them home when they feel that their careers have been satisfied overseas and they really feel like coming back and making a contribution back home.
From the outset, you had some pretty well-known Australians, coming to actually make this happen. Tell us about them.
Well, I guess what we try to do is to make stories about everybody, but the people that came up that were really fantastic, and we called them our three young lions, were Lachlan Murdoch, Anthony Pratt and Peter Lowy, who are great Australians doing great things in the United States, as we all know. And they put their hand up and said, "Yes, Ken, we'd like to be helpful, we'd like to be patrons." And obviously they helped us with the initial thing that makes things happen, which is financial support, which I think Advance should be eternally grateful.
So how big is Advance now?
Well, it could be 1 million, because there are 1 million Australians working and living overseas. It's got 25,000 active members, and it's in 80 countries. So it's very substantial now, but it could go a long way further.
Is it government supported?
It is. But what we try to do is make it commercial, so we don't believe that we've got any right to any particular funds. So we do it program by program. So we try to get commercial outcomes for people. If a premier or a prime minister comes to the United States, Europe or London, and at that moment the green environment is on the agenda. When Penny Wong launched our green vertical in New York, we got 140 Australians flying in from all around the world who are playing great roles in that area, who were introduced to Penny, and I think want to give back to Australia. And if you see them, these people, as you're seeing here at this Advanced Women's Leadership Summit, there are some incredible people working in the green vertical, working in every area that you can conceive of around the world.
Ken, it's not just professionals working abroad, it's also people who establish businesses in America. There must be, in a sense, a trade or an export dividend from the network. Is that right?
We help them, and I think that does. And interesting enough, when you say that, though, negotiating the free trade agreement with the United States was not an easy thing for the Prime Minister and Michael Thorley to achieve. But with the help of Advance, there were a lot of questions asked about, relation to visas, where Australians were, what the reciprocs were back home, and we made a very significant contribution to that in the US, as we will in China. Talking about the benefits that can come back to Australia using, the people who are there as our sounding board.
I know you're not the kind of guy to actually talk up your own book, but, you did become a general, so how did that actually come about?
Well, I don't even really know the answer to that myself, but I got a call from the Prime Minister who asked me if I'd like to be Consul General in New York. I actually foolishly said no to start off with, and then got a different call sometime later from Max, who said, "Ken, we want you to go." And it was the best decision I ever made. It was a transformational period for Jill and myself. We met some wonderful people. And I think I recognised for the first time in my life, although I'd been in public service before that, how important it is to come from the private sector into the government sector, because we do bring another dimension, and I think an important one.
So Max was Max the Axmore Wilton?
He was. He rang
Hard to say no to.
Impossible to say no to.
Before all that, what were the things that you did in your life?
Well, I've had a lot of careers, which I was convinced today a good thing, actually, by some of the participants here. But I started off with Unilever. I was in marketing. I was ran the detergent group here in Australia as marketing manager. I went into investment banking, and then into the World Bank. And then we wanted to come back to Australia because our kids were at the right sort of age. So I started Merrill Lynch down here, which was quite a significant thing for somebody to do coming out of the United States. And now I'm still connected with finance, but my great passion, as my wife is with Indigenous affairs, working in the Northern Territory, my great passion is talent. And I think I'm chairman of Talent 2, which is all about harnessing talent around the globe, particularly in the region. And one of the reasons that I stay with Advance is that this is all about talent.
Ken, a lot of people don't understand the importance of a network. Is this something that you think that young people need to be taught and encouraged to embrace?
Well, I think, a network means many things. A network is not one single thing. I think in our schools we should be teaching our young pupils more about community service. Some great Australians like Jimmy Wolfenson would not employ anybody in his firm unless they spent a considerable amount of their time or their money in public service, in charitable areas, in whatever. So I think if you have that sort of focus in your life, networks just appear. They're not something you can ask for. You can't ask for a mentor. You can actually put yourself in front of people who might mentor you, but you do that by, quite often, by the work that you do outside your main career.
Well, people who lecture on the subject of networking always say, give as get. Do you agree?
I do. I absolutely, totally agree with that. And I don't think networking necessarily comes from the older person being a mentor for the younger person. I think peer mentoring is important, and Advance does a lot of that. So going to New York and meeting somebody your age, maybe had 1 or 2 years more experience in whatever field they're in, whether it be creative or whatever, talking to them about what their problems are and how they're coping with them, how they should adapt. I think that's important itself. In fact, there's sometimes the the stronger and more positive way.
Well, one of the controversial topics that have come up with International Women's Day and around this conference is a question about women on boards and whether we should have a compulsory. What do you say?
I think it goes without comment, actually, that we need to encourage more women to and do things to put more women on boards. I think you've seen here today at the Advanced Women's Summit that there are some incredible people who can make great contribution to Australia. I think it's a non-issue, but the problem hasn't been solved. There needs to be a lot more women on boards, and I would not have a problem if there was 55-45 with more women than men. I think it's all about talent, and they have the talent and they have the ability to make a great contribution. There are so many problems out there that I think need new solutions, that diverse boards, but bringing skill and talent, do better jobs.
Reflecting on your career and your achievements, how important has it been for you to have a goal?
Well, a lot of things you end up doing through your life you never thought you'd ever be doing, and you certainly don't realise where you are when you're there. You know, you look back and say, wow, that was a wonderful period in your life. I think having a goal is important, having focus is important, and being prepared to work hard. But I think it's very difficult to wake up one morning and say, you know, I'm going to be this, that or the other if it's not achievable. I think you have to have realistic short-term ambitions. And, you know, some people want to be actors, writers, chefs. I think all of those things are fantastic. But achieve every single one of those, because each one of them needs some form of excellence and capability. You need to take one step at a time. The big trick in my world, I think, is taking the first step. When you take the second, the first looks much easier. You take the third, and you can see the end of the road coming up fairly quickly.
Once again, you know, thinking back on your achievements, you know, was there any one person who was an inspiration that partly explains, you know, why you've been successful?
I think there are many people, actually. I think I told some stories today at the beginning of the summit about people who've inspired me. You know, there are so many great stories out there. I think I've been fortunate to meet many, many great people, and you take something away from each of them. In reality, you have a few very, very great friends, and then you have other people that you professionally respect, other people that inspire you. I think it's great to have a jigsaw puzzle, if you like, of people that you interact with sorts of different ways. So as many friends as possible, I think, and as few enemies as you can have, I think, is the answer.
A great guy, very inspirational.